What if the person you think you are is just a fraction of who you truly are? What if years of conditioning and surviving in a challenging world have left you clinging to strategies and beliefs that mask your truest nature? I'm Catherine Duca, psychotherapist and self-esteem coach, and you're listening to Who Do You Think You Are? A show that looks beneath our psychological masks and uncovers our profoundly messy, beautiful, brilliant, tender-hearted essence. Join me as we go in search of the hidden power of our true selves. I'm so glad you're here.
And you know that to be absolutely true. Today is Sunday, November 2nd, and there is no place I would rather be than with you this evening. Thank you for spending this time together. You're tuning in to Who Do You Think You Are? A podcast devoted to your well-being, your emotional truth, and your right to live a life that honors you. On this show, we talk about how you can cultivate the highest regard for yourself, how you can live from a place of genuine self-respect and self-love, and how you can make yourself a priority in your own life. Join me each week for insights and strategies designed to help you drop your psychological masks, connect with your truest essence, and live life with more ease. Because we know that when we approach life in this way, we naturally and effortlessly have more room, more generosity, and more love for one another. And dear listeners, wide receivers, I say it each and every week, when have we needed love more than this very day? So welcome. Before we dive into the program, I want to remind you of something very important. This is a show of self-reflection. This is a space for storytelling, both my stories and yours, and a place where we explore our emotional landscape. But I want to make one thing perfectly clear. This show is in no way a substitute for professional support. It can't be. So please, if you are struggling with something, if you are in pain, if you are stuck somewhere in your life and just can't move ahead, and you're hurting about that or anything else, please talk to someone. Reach out. Good qualified help is available. So take advantage of it. If you don't know where to start, drop me a line. Email me, simple enough, Catherine@catherineduca.com. That's Catherine@catherineduca.com. And let me know what you need. If you need help with a referral or a resource, I'll be so happy to help you. Don't go it alone, okay? White knuckling it is not a badge of courage. Getting help, getting support is, I think. All right? I want you to know you are not too much. Your feelings are not too much. So if you're living with that in your head, I want to dispel you of that. A qualified professional wants to know you, wants to hear you, wants to help you. So please consider that. All right. And the other thing is, if you find this content valuable, please like, share, and subscribe. I have one word for you, algorithm, right? You know how that goes. So thank you in advance. Okay, let's dive in. Now, I want to say at the outset that the topic that we're talking about tonight is, it's quite a layered topic. It's something that's very tender, actually, but there's a lot to it. And as I was compiling the material to share with you tonight, I found that I had a lot of notes, probably way too many than I can share with you in this limited time. So you may hear me or you may see me kind of shuffling between my handwritten notes because I'm old school and my notes on the screen. So I hope you'll bear with me. All right. Um, tender topic, a nuanced topic, and quite a layered topic. Last week, we talked about the ache of self-abandonment. Self-abandonment, that emotional disappearing act so many of us do, where we contort ourselves. We twist ourselves into some kind of emotional pretzel. We shrink. We silence our voice. We tamp down our emotions, all to stay in the good graces of people, people we care about, but maybe also to the world at large. We may have become someone who, because of our upbringing, we learned to believe, right? This is not an absolute fact, it's a belief, and beliefs are nothing more than interpretations. We came to believe that we have to sacrifice ourselves oftentimes in order to feel loved. Well, tonight, I want to say at the outset, I want to offer a huge disclaimer. Tonight's conversation is not about fixing that problem. It is not about fixing or curing self-abandonment. We are simply beginning to notice it. So that's the huge disclaimer. Objects are closer than they appear in the mirror. Well, we're not going to talk about a cure tonight. We're talking about a beginning. Now, you might say, Catherine, come on, I need more than that. Last week, I realized from the conversation that I leave myself behind. Okay, good, got it. Now, what do I do about it? Well, I want to remind you about a very important guideline. Before there is doing, when it comes to making any sort of change in our psychology, in how we view ourselves, before there's doing, there must be understanding. This can't be rushed. Okay, I hear everybody's sigh of disappointment, but it's true. This sort of change cannot be rushed. It's not an intellectual pursuit. Now, some of the information I'm going to be offering tonight, and that I started last week, is of an intellectual nature because I'm laying out and mapping out a foundation regarding this thing we do called self-abandonment when we abdicate our own needs. So it starts top down, but really the transformation comes when we activate what we know intellectually and we take action. And by action, I mean small experiments. You see, when we talk about who we are in relationships, how we got to be who we are was part and parcel of our early relationships. So we became who we are by virtue of the people in our orbit when we were younger. And so any change that happens in adulthood, because this is deep stuff, can only happen vis-a-vis another relationship. We do not develop self-awareness in a vacuum. We can't sit on our couch at home and sort of think ourselves into changing in a way, and in the terms that we're talking about tonight, self-abandonment. You can't read a book and think you're going to change. You can't even listen to a couple of podcast episodes and think you're going to change. It doesn't work that way. You have to take this material on the road, if you will, and begin to make small but meaningful experiments. And I'll tell you what I mean as we get more into this. So tonight is about witnessing and noticing. Now, The crux of this show is what happens after we begin to realize, after it dawns on us, and maybe you've known this for a long time, or maybe it came to your awareness last week when you listened to the podcast, that in order for you to feel loved, you may have really compromised yourself, uh, denied your own needs. And if we deny our own needs, if we suppress them long enough, guess what happens? We forget we have them. We don't recognize them. We don't know how to speak about our needs. And in fact, over time, what happens is we sort of calcify, and we put kind of a shield around those needs. And we may even pride ourselves on not being needy at all. So this is what happens over time when at some point in our lives we caught on that the way to stay in someone's good grace, our parents, our caregivers, authority figures, the way to be liked or loved or approved of or belong or stay connected, all of those interpersonal states, we had to adjust who we are. And by adjust, I mean adjust down. So if our emotional spark, if our truth, if our authenticity were on a dimmer switch, somewhere along the line, we figured out, we inferred that we have to turn that dimmer all the way, I think it's to the left, all the way down, in order for our caregivers, our parents, our teachers to be comfortable. Because if we kept them comfortable, if we didn't ask for too much, if we didn't burden them, if we didn't look to them for something they didn't want to give or couldn't give, then they wouldn't get upset with us. And each of us, I believe, who was raised with parents who were to some degree emotionally unavailable, each of us learned just the right amount of dimming that we had to do in order to keep that equilibrium. If we had parents who were everything from emotionally unavailable to immature to addicted, ill, mentally ill or physically ill, or otherwise unable to meet our needs, we probably had to dim our light and our very essence and who we were pretty severely. And when we do this, we find ourselves in a state of self-abandonment. Now, the irony here is worth mentioning, because the reason we do this, and I really hope I can express this in a way that is easily understood. We do these things in order to keep ourselves from being abandoned or from feeling abandoned. You know, we tend to think, some people think of abandonment as, say your parent walks out, leaves the family, walks out, doesn't return, or, your parents get a divorce and you don't have much contact with the parent who you're not living with, or promises to pick you up on Sunday and those promises were broken. We tend to think that that's what abandonment is. But there are many, many, many more subtle and mild forms of abandonment. And when someone pulls away from us emotionally or can't comfort us as children when we're struggling, when we're frightened, when we are hurt, that is a form of emotional abandonment. And if you want to call that lowercase abandonment, then go ahead. But boy, It's something that we carry to our core. So the irony is that we engage in these behaviors, we dim our light so as not to feel abandoned, but in the process, we abandon ourselves. And who do we live with 24/7? Of course. So think about that. We abandon ourselves. We don't show up for ourselves. We don't know how to speak up, show up, advocate for ourselves, stand our own ground, negotiate things, um, take in, say, well-meaning and constructive feedback because maybe we're too afraid that we've made a mistake or we've done the wrong thing. So imagine living in that state 24/7 for a year or 10 or 20, 30, your whole life. Imagine that. Imagine what that does to your brain and your body. Imagine the low level fight or flight that puts you in, where you're at odds with yourself. This won't come as a surprise. It takes a certain amount, as in quite a bit, of psychological energy to keep our natural needs suppressed. I mentioned last week the beach ball analogy, right? It's like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. You can only do that but so long. And if you're holding multiple beach balls in your arms underwater over a long period of time, pop, 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 pop. They're gonna pop up right, at the most inopportune times and ways, right in front of you. So this is what's at stake. Now, this is the other. We're going to play kind of double Dutch tonight because there are a couple of very important trends that I'm going to weave together. And one is that when it dawns on you or when you decide to declare that, maybe you were listening last week and you said, oh gosh, yeah, that's it. I abandoned myself. I don't want to do that anymore. I'm not going to do that anymore. Well, here's the thing. We do not go from I'm not going to do this anymore all the way to now I know what I need. And now I've arrived in that place where I can, stand in my power and be present in my life. We don't make that leap. It's too much. What happens is we go through you could call it a portal, you could call it a hallway, you can call it a mid-ground, a psychic space where we're not quite sure what we're doing. Because when we say to ourselves, no more, I'm not going to leave myself any longer. When we make that declaration, we enter a very, what I call wobbly zone. It's the zone where we are beginning, and that's the operative word, beginning to let go of a certain way of being that we are beginning to understand no longer serves us, beginning to let that go, one sliver at a time, before we have another way of being. So in between no more and okay, I've got it, is this place of uncertainty. It's clumsy, emotionally speaking. It's awkward. It's tentative because you're trying on something new. The image that comes to my mind is trapeze artists. You have to let go of one of the bars in order to catch the other bar. But okay, that space in between can feel very threatening. Now, what is our individual net? What is our safety net? Okay, our safety net, well, let me put a plug in for working with a qualified psychotherapist or mental health professional. The safety net is the support and the insight of another person, a person with whom you can interact with very differently than the way you feel you need to interact in order to feel accepted. So when you come to therapy, what you're offered immediately is what Carl Rogers called unconditional positive regard. And that doesn't mean that if you call me, for example, I'm going to agree with everything you say, or I'm going to not present another point of view. So it's not about that. It's about, I, like any qualified therapist or mental health person, will hold the space for you. I'll hold the space so that you can let go of that bar of who you've been and, you know, suspend judgment while reaching for that next bar. I'm gonna accompany you in that in between space by holding presence, by using myself as kind of a, what are those things, musicians use, a tuning fork, I believe, right? I'm going to, because I know something you don't yet know, but you will know, and that is I know the light that is within you before you felt you had to dim yourself. I know that. I know that because that's true for every one of us. You know, the sun is always shining, no matter how cloudy, no matter hurricane, category 5. The sun is always up there, blazing. But if your light has been obscured by these interpretations and beliefs, I'm going to hold for you that which you don't yet recognize within yourself, which is your own magnificence. That's why the show is called Who Do You Think You Are? Because who you think you are is that dimmed person. But who I know you to be is this magnificent person who is a light on this planet. No matter what you've done, no matter what you've done, no matter what mistakes you've made. Now, you might say, sidebar, you might say, well, I can think of a few people on this earth who I would say don't have any light. I see no evidence of their light. Well, um, yeah, I hear you. I hear you. There are people who live in states of darkness and really darkness. And these individuals, unfortunately, sadly, are very, 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 I believe, cut off from source, cut off from their divine intelligence. They're cut off from their light. So they're not so much dimming as they are disconnected, severely disconnected. But what I do is I pray for those people that they find connection, because those people are not calling a psychotherapist. I can promise you that. Those people are not calling a psychotherapist. The people who are more likely to call are the people maybe on the receiving end of the way those individuals treat people. But so I'm talking with you tonight about the overwhelming bell curve of people, you and me, and so many like us who figured out the way to get by, the way to feel safe, the way to dodge a bullet of someone's wrath, the way to navigate my alcoholic parents' unpredictability is just to play it safe, stay beige, for heaven's sakes, stay beige. Just tofu, pick your analogy, blend in and and squelch my uniqueness. So this is what happened. So tonight's conversation is about the in-between stage, the wobbles, if you will. I can promise you this, that if you're willing to ride out, and this is why it's so important to have some support when you're going through this, if you can ride out and tolerate the discomfort and the emotional awkwardness, and even accept the fact that you're going to reach back to the old pattern and you're going to question yourself, am I doing it wrong? Well, you're not doing it wrong. If you're willing to step into that space and grapple with it, because that's really the struggle to be in that mid-range, then I promise you something will happen. Your sheer willingness to stay there a little longer than you did last time will build your muscle. It can't go any other way. You strengthen the muscle of staying still, staying with yourself, I mean to say, even when the discomfort arises. So discomfort tolerance is the language we use in psychotherapy, is very important. Very important. Not unlike when you begin to work out. You push yourself a little bit, not too much. You're in a window, where you're doing more than you normally do. You're pushing yourself. How are you going to feel the next day? You're going to feel a little achy. But it's a different ache than the ache of self-abandonment. It's a different ache. It's the ache of working out. So it's qualitatively quite different. It feels different in your body. So this is what we must pay attention to, staying present to ourselves while we feel uncomfortable as we're experimenting with getting through that mid phase. It is the caterpillar's chrysalis. Am I saying it right? Chrysalis. If you have ever, I have to say, if you have ever witnessed a caterpillar go through the stages before it becomes a butterfly, I mean, I know it's cliche, but I'll tell you, if I witnessed it. Short story, quickly. I had a fear of caterpillars, actually. You could probably call it a phobia, in fact. Why, you ask? Because when I was 4 years old, I remember the day, I remember the actual day, there were a lot of caterpillars around. And I was playing with a group of friends. And we were little. And I remember one boy collected a coffee cup. There was a cardboard coffee cup. And he collected a bunch of caterpillars. You probably can see where this is going. He collected a bunch of caterpillars in the cup. My skin is crawling. And he said, hey, Kathy, look over there. And when I looked over there, you know what he did? He pulled my shirt and he dumped the caterpillars down my back. Okay. You're probably getting triggered, but it has a happy ending. So I was, how old did I say? I was 4 or 5. I was in kindergarten. Cut to a lifelong dread of caterpillars. Well, not that long ago, a few years ago, a friend of mine said, I'm going to raise these caterpillars. You want to do it with me? I said, hell to the no. No way. But anyway, I did. Okay. So within about a 2-week period, I watched a caterpillar go through the stage. And when it got to the chrysalis stage, and this is like the mid stage that you may go through if you're willing to embark on this leg of your journey. It is, I mean, you could say it's profound. You could say it's sort of grotesque in a way. But in another way, it was quite really miraculous, because when the caterpillar cocoons itself and it begins its transformation. That which it is turns into this gooey, dark kind of, well, goo. And something very miraculous happens. A lot of the cells die, but then there are these other cells called imaginal cells. And those are the cells that survive. And from those cells, a newly formed creature develops from those imaginal cells. And then, of course, you have the butterfly, and the wings are all kind of tucked in, all origamied. And when it begins to break through that cocoon and it unfolds its wings, and from a capsule that's about 2 inches big emerges this glorious, colorful creature with a wingspan 5, 6, 7 times the width of the little capsule it was confined in. It's mind-blowing. Well, it blew my mind. And so I liken this journey, this miraculous journey of isolation, of cocooning, of being in an echo chamber with your own needs that have been submerged, and you become estranged from your own needs, and then you try to have a relationship. You try to have an intimate relationship with people. How can that happen? How can that happen? If we're too busy playing to the other person's comfort and keeping them just so, people pleasing, which is a form of manipulation, actually. Well, you begin, if you think of the caterpillar, that could be all of us. That could be each of us. If we're willing and we have a roadmap and we coax ourselves and encourage ourselves and maybe link up with someone who will encourage us beyond our growth edge, then the day comes when we unfold our wings and we fly, and our hearts and doors and opportunity and love and our imagination flies open. And isn't that beautiful? Isn't that beautiful? I think it is. I'm very moved by this whole process. So I would say, in a nutshell, that's the essence of psychotherapy. Helping you move through the stages of your own becoming and having someone support you so that you can become, I use the word all the time, integrated. Integrated. Take those lost parts of yourself and merge them with your own adult wisdom and become whole. Not perfect, not good or bad, but whole. Not black or white, but the combination of the two. Then you've really got something there. Oh, that would be you. You've really got you. Okay. Well, I think that was a mouthful, don't you? Let's do this. Let's take a break, digest, get something to drink, let the dog out, and let's meet back here in a few minutes. And I'll talk about something interesting you can do to help this integration process along and meet up with yourself in a way that will automatically make you more present to yourself. So you're listening to Catherine Duca, psychotherapist and self-esteem coach, and caterpillar maker. I don't know, butterfly maker, butterfly birther. I think that's a better title. Stay with me. We'll take a short break. Be right back.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity, Kitchener. Unity Spiritual Center, Ottawa. Om Center for Spiritual Living, Satya Center. Begin Within Ministries. Center for Spiritual Living, North Jersey. Unity of Savannah. And the Center for Spiritual Living, Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for being part of the New Thought Media Network. Please like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring.
What would Louise say? Join us every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Mountain Time. Hosted by Reverend Martine Bernard. Explore the wisdom of Louise Hay. Brought to you by New Thought Media Network. Dive into Louise's teachings. Experience healing and empowerment. Reverend Martine shares insights. Connect with a contemporary audience. Unlock your potential. Transform your life with love. Embrace positivity and healing. Join our vibrant community. Ready to join us? Let's spread love and wisdom together. Please like, share, and subscribe. Only on New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring.
What if the person you think you are is just a fraction of who you truly are? What if years of conditioning and surviving in a challenging world have left you clinging to strategies and beliefs that mask your truest nature? I'm Catherine Duca, psychotherapist and self-esteem coach, and you're listening to Who Do You Think You Are? A show that looks beneath our psychological masks and uncovers our profoundly messy, beautiful, brilliant, tender-hearted essence. Join me as we go in search of the hidden power of our true selves. I'm so glad you're here.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, we are talking about the all-important topic of what happens after you declare and realize you no longer want to abandon yourself. You no longer want to swallow your feelings, suppress your emotions, twist yourself into a pretzel, all of those things. You decide you would love to be more present, more out with yourself. But you haven't yet adopted a new way of being. So we're talking about being in that rather, I don't know, I call it inelegant, frankly, clumsy, awkward, tentative state where you make small experiments, and you should only make the small experiments with people with whom you feel safe, and notice how you feel, and then reflect on that. Now, I want to say one more thing before I move on to another aspect of this. When you navigate the wobble zone, and you stay more and more and more present with yourself, a couple of things I think are going to bubble up to the surface, and this is quite normal. You may feel kind of a reckoning with yourself. In other words, in light of these new experiments you're making, you may begin to feel the contrast of what you've never done before. And so that's a reckoning, you know? Oh my goodness, you know, I could have had a lifelong V8, you know? And along with that feeling can emerge, and people are surprised by this, and I don't want you to be surprised if you find yourself, in this state, and you probably will. There's some grief that takes place. it's natural. In fact, I would go so far as to say we can't heal anything deep within without simultaneously feeling the grief or the loss of ourselves the whole time we didn't know any better. So you may grieve the years, my goodness, the decades of performing. You may feel anger or frustration toward yourself. Damn it, why couldn't I do this? Why didn't I do this earlier? Why can't I do it now? I can do it a little bit, but then I revert. Okay. You may feel kind of disoriented, unsure of who you are without that pattern. And there's a good reason for that. I want you to know that is not regression. That is you returning to yourself, returning to yourself. It's not a setback. It's not doing it wrong. In fact, I tell my clients when they arrive in this place and they begin to feel sad, they're surprised because they say, why don't I feel terrific? Well, I have to say, one does feel a sense of mastery every time you do the experiment. But yes, along with that is often sadness. Sadness because you mourn what was lost. And the best thing you can do, in my view, is let yourself be present to that. Let yourself feel that. Let yourself name that. You're mourning what was lost. You're mourning the identity you built your whole life around. That is resting on that core belief that you were too much for people, and so you had to just submerge yourself and hide yourself, right? Because what happens is now you're juggling a lot, right? You're juggling experimenting, you're juggling some mourning, maybe some sadness, along with some mastery. But a miraculous thing happens. A miraculous thing. You notice, and you're a witness to your own self, that one time you chose yourself. You were true to yourself. Maybe you had an interaction and someone disagreed or asked something of you, and you paused. And instead of reflexively saying, yeah, me too, or sure, I agree, or I'll do that, or I don't know, whatever you say, or I'm not angry, I'll go along with whatever you say. Maybe I'm disappointed, but no, I'm going to gloss over that. I'm going to push that disappointment away. I'm going to deny it. I'm going to look on the bright side. Now, nothing wrong with looking at the upside, but you know what I'm talking about here. If you do that habitually, then you know, that's kind of one size fits all. I'm not acknowledging how I feel. So the work is beginning to choose yourself one little yes at a time. Or if the shoe fits, one small no at a time. Notice the discomfort, stay with it, because this is the work. This is the beginning. This is the tender spot. And all new beginnings deserve your gentleness and your compassion. You know? So just kind of let that, as you're listening, just, you know, let that be something that you're willing to apply to yourself. So tonight's episode is not about a quick fix or a cure. It's about witnessing and becoming and evolving and emerging into and revealing. Because the best in you that's already been in you is yet to be revealed. But this is how it's done. This is how it's done. Is it messy? Yes. Is it inelegant? Yes. But it's also sacred. And most importantly, it's yours. It's yours. So let me go to the chat. I want to welcome a couple of people here. Janine, welcome. What a relevant topic for so many people, especially this time of year when many of us are dealing with holiday expectations and pressures and living in that nebulous place of trying to meet needs. Janine, thank you for that. I could say so much about that. And then I'm noticing just Judy. Welcome, Judy. You're kind of speaking to Janine. I love that. Janine, the holidays are such a good example. Phew, how to deal with those expectations. Have new rituals, behaviors. Yes, well, what I want to say is in our culture, there's something that happens. Maybe it's from the, childhood stories or Cinderella and all of that. We trick ourselves into thinking that special days or that on special days, like holidays, like our wedding day, like our special birthday, the people in our lives are somehow going to be the people of our dreams. And we're sometimes shocked and surprised when they aren't. So this is a perfect time of year. If you run yourself ragged, if you, here's a Christian reference. I once did a post that a lot of people responded to. It was a post that depicted Christmas stockings hung on the fireplace. And instead of, someone's name, each stocking said, one said overwhelmed, the other stocking said exhausted, the other one said, burnt out, something like that. If you tend to run yourself ragged over the holidays, or if you are having some expectations of how people should be or how you should be, and it's out of the realm of what is healthy for you, think twice. Because these days are not magic days. People are not going to suddenly become who you want them to be. And this might be a good time to, if you feel you should scale back or cut down on your social engagements or spend less money or make some change, but you're too afraid because of what they're going to think. Well, this might be, depending on how big a thing this is for you, this might be a place to experiment. Okay? Because when we're not in the driver's seat of what's good for us, when we treat ourselves by virtue of defaulting to what we think others expect, day after day, year after year, our true self gets buried. It gets buried. And it's harder to find ourselves. But I hope you hear tonight as a way out of that place of self-reproach, it's the opposite of positive self-regard. It's going dark on your own well-being. So I'd like to offer an exercise. Last week, I talked about doing mirror work. I'm just looking for it right now. Talked about doing mirror work. This is like mirror work, but a twist. Mirror work is where you look in the mirror, not in an observation kind of way, not in a critical way, not in counting your crow's feet kind of a way. No, you look in your eyes. You look deeply into your eyes, and you connect with the person looking back, and you let that person know, hey, I know what it was like for you back then. I understand what that time was like, what you went through. So this is a variation on that, but you do it with a photograph of yourself. And I have the instructions, not that there are really many instructions, but yeah, you can call this being your own witness. And what you do is you get a photograph of yourself. You go into the attic in the shoebox and you get a photograph, or you go all the way back on your camera roll, and you find a photograph of yourself at a tender age, whatever that is for you, when things felt confusing, when things felt out of your control, when you felt you or your family were in turmoil, anything like that. You felt sad, you felt rejected, you felt hurt, you felt lonely. Find a picture at that point in your life and hold that image gently, in your hand or as you're looking at it, and let your younger self know the following. I see you. We all want to be seen. It's the number one most important thing I think each of us wants, to be seen, to be heard, to be known. But guess what? We are too disconnected from ourselves. So you hold the photograph and you say to your younger self, I see you. I remember what that felt like when, mom and dad were arguing viciously and you didn't know where to hide. I get you. When all the attention went to your sibling, because he or she or they had something going, a mental health problem, or an actual illness of some sort, and all the attention went there, and you were praised for being the easy one, the quiet one. You say to the reflection of your younger self, I see you. I remember you. I understand what you did and why you did it, to stay safe, to feel loved, to have a place in that family. And you go on to tell yourself, you're not alone anymore. This is really crucial. You're not alone anymore. I am here now. I've got you. Now, this is not pretend. This is, the part of us that holds the old belief. It's not a dead thing. It's a dormant but active part of ourselves. So if our higher consciousness can speak to that part and draw that part closer by witnessing, okay, I've got you now. If anybody tries to hurt you, they have to go through me now. They have to go through me. And I'm not going to let that happen. And I draw you close to me. And I envelop you and I embrace you, dear one. And I love you. And you're here now, and I'm here now. And I've got you. I've got you no matter what happens. I am here. You might feel grief, dear listeners. You might feel warmth. You might feel nothing at all at first, and that's okay. But do it again. Do it again, because this practice is a bridge. It's a bridge between who you were and who you are becoming, between survival and counting on yourself, between the heartache of missing yourself and the calmness and the peace of returning to yourself, returning home. Home is where the heart is. Home is where the heart is. And metaphorically, we've become alienated from our heart in this way. So I liken this, beyond the caterpillar, to Dorothy and those ruby slippers, that made such an impression on me in my childhood. The slippers were there the whole time. And they were. And you have them now. You're just beginning to learn how to use them. But home has been there the whole time. And you, in all your tender-heartedness and your magnificence and your lovability has been there the whole time, regardless of whether somebody did or didn't recognize it or didn't recognize it enough or tried to keep you at bay. They just didn't know. All right? So if you grew up thinking, and I'll leave you with this, if you grew up thinking you were too much, your feelings were too much, your emotions were too much, your needs were just too damn much, I submit to you, with all the respect I have for caregivers, that perhaps it was your parents or your caregivers or your teachers who were themselves not enough for you. So all the while you've been holding yourself on the hook that you're too big, too much, too needy. I think maybe it's exactly the opposite. And they weren't enough. And I don't say that to indict anyone, because they themselves had imperfect parents who suffered from inadequacy. It's just the way it was. So you can break that cycle. You can come home to yourself. You can become whole. Well, I'll think of all of you this week as I go about my week doing this work myself. I'll be doing it along with you. Dear listeners, thank you so much. Thank you for receiving me tonight. You honor me. And I'll meet you back here next week. And until then, know that you are loved, but much more than that, you are love. So spread it around. Take good care. Love you all. Good night.